Well, I'm Zan Bockes, and I like to tell people that I'm a direct descendant of Bacchus, the Roman god of wine and revelry. And so we'll just start with that. Um, yeah, as far as my background goes, not a whole lot to report. I came up here in '87 to go to the graduate school in creative writing and got my MFA in 1990. Um, what I've been doing since then, don't ask because I don't know. But I'd like to start with one of my older poems. My father teaches me to fly. I'm old enough to know it is not possible, but the wind rushing in from the lake lifts my hair, brushes my face like a wing. I feel like I could fly, I say. He grins. Anything is possible, he says. He says, it's windy enough to fly across the lake. He drapes a towel over my bare shoulders, tells me to flap it like this, and he spreads his great arms out like an eagle, his fingers extended like the wingtips of hawks. I know if I run fast enough down the dock, I can fly out to the mooring post. His eyes believe in me. I suck in air, flap my wings, and know that I can fly. From the beach to the end of the dock, it's a 40-foot runway. My father gives me the starting sign, and I tear down the dock, straight into the full wind. Legs pumping, wind snapping my terry cloth wings. I see the gray lake ahead, and I'm off the end, flapping, struggling, willing the wind to pick me up. And I think I fly, maybe I fly a few feet, but the cold lake crashes in my ears. When I come up, my father stands on shore, shaking his head, and the towel weighs me down. He says only one thing: you didn't try hard enough. Okay.
Well, I remember hearing, I think you read that poem the first time when you had kind of a book party over there at that Stensrud building. I think it was.
Right.
Yeah,
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 that's a great poem.
yeah.
Well, what? Go ahead and read us another one. Well, let's listen to two or three, and then we'll talk a minute about stuff.
Okay. I guess I'll start with amusement. That's what I call these things. They look like a block of prose, but they taste like poetry. So they're basically kind of like free writing that's been loosely revised.
There you go.
Yeah. This one's called The Heart Burglar. My heart was removed by a surgeon I used to love. He claimed it caused more trouble than it was worth. I know now that we will never turn in tandem, too wrenched by the twisting of twilight and the haunting of the moon. How did it happen that he would perform this surgery at night while I lay sleeping? Incubus, I shout when I discover my aorta is gone. He only smiles and wags his bloody finger under my nose. He displays the organ in a jelly jar for his friends. The friends shuffle by in a line, pointing and laughing. Then he hands the jar to me. The object inside is shriveled and black, like a bloated prune, too small to be of use. I say he's guilty of breaking and entering. I say he's stolen my heart. He says, I gave it back. You have no case against me. How generous to return a broken heart. All right.
I love that poem.
Let's see.
That poem does so much. It does so much of the things that I just get a hell of a kick out of, and that is Well, it plays with dream almost. It's like a dream.
Right.
And then all the puns, all the wordplay, all the what I call John Prine-isms.
Oh,
Just love that kind of language play that
uh,
most people dub as cliche. And it's like, yeah, well, why do you think it's like that? Because it's fun,
all right, right.
it
That's
is.
kind of one of my main reasons for writing it all is
It's
just
fun.
to have fun.
Exactly. And that was just a fun poem, even though it ends on, a fairly serious note. I mean,
Right.
that mixture of fun and that underlying sort of seriousness to the whole poem. I
Mhm.
just think that's genius. We throw that word around, so we'll
Right, right.
genius.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Okay. So the next one I'm going to read is we talked a little bit beforehand about form, writing in forms.
Right, right.
So this one is like a series of rhymed couplets. And one thing I tried to do is embed the rhymes in the lines, not at the end of the line, but when you read it, it gets absorbed. So the rhyming isn't obvious.
Right.
So this is called For the Lost. You've been turning right at every corner. The city night tangles your hair. If the moon were out, you'd be making wishes, but doubt strings lines across your eyes, makes neon signs a disguise for gold. The wind is so cold, it cuts like dry ice wires, struts and whips the newspapers down the street in a rolling stampede. You drown your teeth in Old Crow, bite the sorrow on your tongue in two, tight as a clenching fist. St. Anthony knows your lyric rambles, knows the wind owes you money. The empty streets are long tonight. This wind, a bitter song.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's that the hiding those rhymes by just sort of, because it's a narrative, the sentence goes past the end line, and
Right,
then
right, right. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's,
Yeah.
you hear the music, but you don't get that tick tock
Right, 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 right. Yeah.
stop rhyme type thing going.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I got to read a couple Montana poems.
Sounds
I
good.
could find them. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, you can't be a Montana poet without writing at least one poem about a bar, I think.
Well, yeah, I'll be quick to point out how, strongly I felt about both Old Crow and St. Anthony appearing in that last poem.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Okay.
Your poem.
This is called Evening at a Crowded Bar. What we think is fool's gold is gold in its purest form, yet our hearts are stone, fossilized bones, once chafed raw by the certainty sought in the center of solitude. We try hard not to do the expected thing, try hard not to let our distant vision burn with the impermanence of blurred conversations. We've counted years of speaking out of turn. We're deaf to love with our useless chatter, our talk of pointless matters, blemished joy, responsibilities shunned, the tedious narrative of tedious days. While beer soothes the nameless pressure, our pursuit of empty treasures. Here is our fool's gold, an insistent measure of conviction as we seek the return of a solemn and glorious kingdom. At last we acknowledge the true knowledge. We're drunk.
Yeah, that's a wisdom we've gone looking for, those of us familiar with places like that.
Oh God, that was fun to write.
Exactly. Yeah. The wisdom in the back bar.
Yeah.
in the glass. I uh, what was I going to say about that? No, it's it skipped
Your
my.
train of thought derailed.
Pardon me.
Your train of thought derailed.
Train of thought derailed. It always does. Uh, so when you came out here, uh, you came out here. What year did you come out here to Missoula?
87.
87.
Right.
And so trying to think, I guess, yeah, Hugo was gone, wasn't he?
Right. Right.
He was gone. And so who were sort of the people that you sort of studied with at that time?
When I was in school, I studied mostly fiction.
Uh-huh.
So Earl Gantz and Bill Kittredge were
Yeah,
teaching
yeah.
there then.
Okay. Yeah.
And I took some poetry classes from Greg Pape
Yeah.
and Patricia Godeke.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were still there in the mid 90s when I found my way over there to, and so was Kittredge. Earl had retired,
Right. Right.
but I was around back in the early 80s and 70s. So I did encounter Earl a couple times. I liked Earl a lot.
Yeah.
He
He
was
was great.
a really
Yeah.
nice guy. I got to get along with him really well. And a good writer. He just didn't, he wasn't able to sort of have the productivity in the book market as that a lot of writers had, but
Right.
he was a
Right.
good teacher, I thought.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah. So did you write some fiction back then?
Yeah, yeah, actually, actually, I was I was writing poetry. I thought I was writing poetry, and in a personal conference in his office one day, Hugo informed me that I really wasn't writing poetry. Maybe I ought to think about writing fiction. And it's like, well,
Right, right.
I said, I have thought about that, but I was like, I was moving furniture and working full time. And it was thought, it takes a bit of time and organization to do something like write fiction. And I didn't think that I maybe had that. I was stealing little bits of time. Anyway, so I thanked him for his advice and
Right.
but when I went back to school years later and decided I would better get a teaching degree, and that
Mm,
way I probably wouldn't either wind up dead on the highway from driving drunk or some other stupid thing I was doing in my other lifestyle in the 20s. So and I just we'd had started having kids, so I decided to be a good teacher. And when I did that, I thought, well, maybe I'll take old Dick's advice, and I signed up for a class in fiction with Earl, and
mm,
so I really enjoyed it, and I started trying to just write short stories.
right.
So I did that for a while. Yeah, I wrote a few short stories, and
Mm,
I don't think I could ever maybe make the leap to writing a novel. It just seemed like
yeah. Yeah.
task to me.
Yeah. I did write a novel. Actually, I wrote 4 novels.
Wow.
Actually, one novel 4 times over.
Yeah. Did you anybody ever act interested in it?
Not like they should have.
Yeah, exactly. Like you wanted them to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Um, yeah, Robert Lee, I know, started out sort of as a fiction guy. I mean, he published a novel, and then, but he was writing poetry, I think, all along too.
Hmm.
Probably
Hmm.
most people that write poetry and fiction have always been maybe doing both. I don't know.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of a mode that I get into.
Hmm.
I'll go for maybe a year or two where all I'm writing is poetry.
Hmm.
And then somehow I'll switch over to fiction and do that for a few years. So it just kind of depends on what mode I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm assuming that with fiction or with like a novel, I mean, it's really an immersion into a character
Oh yeah.
and characters that would take you over, kind of, in a way, I mean.
Right. Yeah, my husband Mike, I used to say, because I'd read him parts of it while I was working on it, and I would talk about it, too, and he would just say, "Zan, they're not real people."
But they were.
Right. Yeah.
In your mind anyway, right?
Yeah. Right.
They've got to be real people, or they're not gonna be real people on the page.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Yeah. Huh.
yeah, crazy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Hugo, I have a poem that's based on one of his poems.
Cool.
It's another Montana bar poem. I think this is the only other one I've written. It's called One Afternoon at Harold's Club. And there's an epigraph from Hugo. You're nothing going in, and now you kiss your hand. And that comes to Milltown Union Bar.
Right.
At the door, you drop all expectations and a damp glove. Behind you, in the thin silver sun, a train crashes by with the shock of fist on bone. The snow follows you in. On the wall, the mountain goat in his plexiglass bubble has been observing the scene for 40 years, ever since Hugo found a poem in its ominous stare, like the hard hand of truth slapped flat on the bar like cash for more. This could be Friday, but it isn't. Your wish has no power here. It could be August with its pressing dust, but on the day before Thanksgiving, the holiday casts a long shadow, like a figure in the doorway. Could be trouble, or no one at all. Three men at a table echo the bad painting, hanging in their leafless tree of regrets, defying gravity with their liquored conversation. You say to the bulb-nosed bartender, I want what they're having. The goat offers a sly smile as 100-watt stars glitter above in the haze. The coin-fed jukebox roars to life. The room begins its slow, delicious spin. Johnny Cash's groaning bass rumbles through Ring of Fire. The men lift their bottles to numbing tongues in eerie syncopation. Beyond the glaring Miller sign in the window, the day begins to dwindle. Your cheap desires a sudsy swirl in fading light. There is a soft, furry animal resting in the pit of your stomach, restless, turning a gut punch. The goat's eyes flame with accusation. Why have you come here? What do you want? The hand you bite is always your own, but you pretend it's a kiss for the sake of the poem, a salty, sweet taste on your lips.
Yeah, a lot of Hugoisms in there.
Yeah, right.
A lot
Right.
of references to that poem, the Union
Yeah.
bar poem. Yeah, that's a fun poem. And back to the whole, I guess, conversation of fun. I mean, a lot of your poems are full of that kind of fun and play and humor. And then there are the other poems that are deadly serious poems. And the first book, Zan's first book, Caught in Passing, that book was, I mean, it obviously starts in memory, and I mean, everybody thinks that we write these nothing but pure autobiography, and we know that's not exactly true, but there's a lot of it that is originates there in our own life, and that poem, a lot of those poems seem to be reflective of who you are and where you came from. And you grew up in Nebraska, right?
Right, right.
And the book jacket says you were born in Germany.
Right, right. In Nuremberg.
Your dad was in the army at that time, or?
Yeah, he was. He spent 4 years in the army and hated it and then never talked about it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I picked up on that in a poem too. In one of the poems, I thought there was that reference, and that reminded me of my own personal life experience. My old man was the same way. I mean, he hated the military. And
right.
didn't want to, never talked about anything after the fact. But he was drafted during World War II, and then but he just wasn't a military kind of guy.
Right, right. Yeah. My dad was like that.
Yeah, didn't like following orders
Yeah,
for no
right.
particular reason other than somebody
Right,
wanted him to do something.
right, right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Huh.
well, so that first book is full of all kinds of great sort of snapshots of a family experience. A lot of the poems are for your dad and your mom, and
Mm.
I think and a brother shows up in there. But do you want to read a couple from that first selection? I mean,
Sure.
the first book, and I think, as I told you earlier, I was reading through it and I was just captivated. And then when I got to that last section, there's 3 sections, and the last one's called "What Home Remains." I mean, I was just kind of blown away by almost everything that I read after that. They were just such
Uh,
poems. So anything that you want to read out of that, a couple of from that book, I think would be a really, really great thing to hear.
sure, sure. I'm kind of looking through. I'll read this one that I picked out. This is kind of a family thing. It was written after my dad died
Mm-hmm.
and written for my stepmom, who was my dad's second wife. They weren't divorced, but my mother died before my dad died. So,
Mm-hmm.
and this is from my stepmother's point of view after my father died. It's called Widow's Poem. Some nights the house, so close and dark, is an executioner's hood. I touch what he touched, killer of dreams, his empty cup by the sink, his worn coin purse, pennies unspent. From the sides of my eyes, I see him reading there in his leather chair. A page turns with its brief flutter, and I stare into the teacup in my hands, how the fractured light mirrors my wavering face. If he were here, he'd ask me how I slept. Gentle companion, careful with his queries. My voice breaks, couldn't, but only memory responds. Hushed slip of water, the lonely lapping of a lake. Loss has many sounds. The kitchen floor creaks under his weight. A pot clanks on the stove. I hear him breathing. From nearby, he reaches to me. It's 4 a.m., December 21st, Omaha, Nebraska, some forgotten universe. I know of no way to escape this gravity, this pulling down of my heart. My eyes tipped up against tears to the ceiling he painted, robin's egg blue. So,
Nice. Those are, I mean, those are terrific images. All those images that, and I guess they gain probably more focus and power because it's a poem reflecting upon someone's passing, but they're just really terrific images in there.
oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah. So, you want another family type poem?
Love one.
This is written for a family, but not necessarily children.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, as they say, fuck them.
Right.
No, that's what George Carlin would have said. Fuck the
Right,
children.
right.
And I'm probably, the one thing about it is we can't get in trouble for doing whatever we want to do or say, or so, that's why I occasionally have to blurt out the word.
Yeah, right. So this poem was based on my going back into the house where I grew up
Mhm.
after it had been sold and new people moved in.
Mhm.
I don't know if I know of several people that have experienced that,
Right,
to be able to go back in and see how they've changed things and
right,
memories coming back, and
right.
it's really kind of a gift to be able to do that. But
Yeah, yeah.
so this is called What Home Remains. The new family allows me in to show the place with pride, a revision of my troubled past, the turmoil I felt inside, where I cowered behind my eyes. This is the house that rang with shouts and shattered glass. They papered over dingy paint, torn out the matted carpet that covered wood floors for 40 years. The kitchen cupboards have lost their hollow slam. Liquor cabinet's opening groan is gone. Bathroom tile glows eggshell white. A matching toilet gleams. The mirror frames my aging face. I never thought I'd look like this. The stairway creaks as it always did, but not along the edge, where I stepped when I could not sleep and wandered out to darkened streets. My parents slept in two twin beds, separate and alone. I heard their voices sifting out, the rise and fall, the blow. Down the hall, my little brother hid, where walls absorbed his nightmare screams in greasy light of sordid dreams, his pained unanswered call. My bedroom belongs to a little boy who's littered new rugs with games and toys. Blue shadows turned cherry yellow, drapes pulled wide to western sun. The sickened elm outside chopped down. They've patched the hole from the shotgun blast, replaced the splintered door. Changes have dissolved the past, our family lost upon the tide like ships that slipped across horizons' finite line. No trace of us remains.
Wow. Right. The only trace remains in that poem in the mind of the poet.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
That's a great poem. Just for all the reasons that you mentioned going in up front, I mean, because most of us have, not most of us, but a lot of us have had that kind of an experience where you were able to go in your mind through the poem, travel back to those experiences that you had sort of with a place. Uh,
Right.
and maybe your past, or because I'm one of the things that triggered in my mind was because I haven't been able to do that with the house that I grew up in. I mean, just I haven't been able to go inside. I've been to it. I've talked to the people at the door, but I wasn't invited exactly inside to take a parade
Mm,
through the
right.
house. And but I think back on houses that I was in, because I like growing up in a place like I grew up in Alberton and small towns, and you were spent a lot of time in a lot of different people's houses, and they all had backstories, whether it was the family that lived there or what preceded before that, because people talk all the time. And sometimes it was a house. I remember my sister lived in a house where the fella had committed suicide
Wow.
in that house prior to her moving in there, and then me going and staying with her as a kid, and being in there at night and sleeping there, and just all the images gain of the house
Mm,
feeling in the house gains a certain aura based on what you know about this place,
Right,
or
right.
or don't know about it.
You don't know, yeah.
Yeah, or just the dinginess sort of it
Mhm.
sometimes. And but that's a very haunting poem. And but the strength of it, I guess, probably is in the imagery again. You do such a great job. They're like little mini movies.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
yeah, it's a very strong poem.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna change things a little bit,
Yeah,
change the
change
focus
up
a
on
bit.
us.
Um, this one, I guess it's kind of self-explanatory, maybe.
Okay.
It's called On Being the True Messiah. It's a tough lot, you understand. How to save the world on $5 a day when you only have enough for a pack of smokes and a Coke at the town pump. Maybe a penny left for Jerry's kids. The snaking arm of the universe guides you, conducting you through littered alleys, softball games, peacetime rallies, burning flames, quiet valleys, botanical names with tendrils so long and curling they rise like steam in your brain. It's tough being the only purely solid chunk of good in the world, where sinister dogs bark from a cage, and the daily business now is rage, and you can never act your age, and life is how you pay death's wage. You've got to be holy just to survive. Finally, you put one sandaled foot in front of the other, arms outstretched, and stay like that. Then they lay you down like an old statue and carry you away.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I'm still working with kids, writing poetry in the schools and stuff. And I mean, that's one of the things that they figure out early is that, you know, if you rhyme 3 times, it's almost going to be a built-in comedy. It's got to be. There's a,
Right.
I mean, especially if it's a regular sort of a hit on a thing, and so that just adds to the whole humor of it. Is all those great rhymes in there. They're surprising
Yeah.
and funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that poem came from like a 3 week period where I actually did think I was the true Messiah, and feel free to laugh.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I realized that if I told people about it, they would just think I was crazy, you know? So, and then I thought, well, I'll just prove that I'm the true Messiah through my actions, through the way I treat other people
Yeah.
with mercy and respect.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe everybody should believe that it's true Messiah, as long as they don't crow about it or just do it through their actions.
Totally. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like one of the, I mean, that was, in a way, that's kind of was one of the sort of realizations I think I personally came to in terms of the whole religion thing, was that in the group aspect of a religious experience that you
Hmm.
usually being involved in, if you enter into that world on a certain level in a certain spot, and and they all were trying to put the all this, oh Jesus up here, and it was like, well, everything you read that was related to this guy was all about acting like that person, being
Right.
like that person. It's
Right.
like,
Right.
what would Jesus do? Well, what the hell? I mean, why can't we all just be Jesus? Why
Right.
can't we all
Right.
be the Messiah? Do exactly what you said, and
Yeah.
uh, and think of yourself as that kind of thing instead of trying to. It's like everything we do in Western culture. There's got to be, it's this hierarchy and elevation. There's always somebody on top, and uh,
Right.
same thing with money and everything else. It's like doesn't
Yeah.
make doesn't make really good sense.
Uh, uh,
But
yeah.
you mentioned that you at one point thought that you were the Messiah, and literally did, because you suffer from some sort of mental illness, or you
Yeah,
think?
it's called schizoaffective disorder, and
Okay.
it's kind of a combination between bipolar disorder and schizophrenia.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a double whammy in a way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
I,
so
I,
go ahead.
oh, I've been dealing with it since I was 19, so
Wow,
it's altered a big chunk of my life.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a how was there a point in time where you felt like it was a easier sort of a manageable thing through pharmacology or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I'd say like about 10 years ago, I really kind of hit on this cocktail of medications that, didn't drag me down, didn't give me a bunch of side effects, but it helped me be stable
Right,
and be able to use my other coping skills. So, and it's kind of, I attribute it to not just to medication, but to age
right,
and, stability in my life. Mike was a big part of that. And yeah, so I've reached a level of recovery that I never could have had before. So
right. Yeah,
very grateful for that.
and I know Mike passed during the pandemic,
Mm,
and I was sorry to hear about that, for sure. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I'll stumble along here and can't think of what I was gonna say. Whoops, silly computer stuff happening to me
Uh-oh.
in regard to, there we go. In regard to that, but so what year did you and Mike get married?
We never actually married, but
You
in
got
fact, I called it a marriage of convenience
totally.
because, like, when it was convenient to say we were married, we said we were married. And when it was convenient to say we weren't married, we would say we weren't married. But
Yeah.
yeah, we met in 1990
Okay.
and
Right.
we were together for 31 years. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Long time.
yeah,
A life.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, uh, why don't you pull out something else, and we'll go to another poem, and maybe I'll remember where the hell I was at. You know how that
okay.
goes. It's like, oh, there we go. I remember what I was talking about.
Right. Well, maybe I'll read a villanelle.
There you go.
Talk about forms.
Yeah.
Uh, this is kind of an older poem too, called Greyhound Villanelle. I watch the sun burn circles in the sky and see the minutes vanish in the air. The bus groans onward, miles are spinning by. I've swallowed moonlight sliced like ice cream pie above the western mountains. I've been there. I've watched the sun burn circles in the sky and seen too many cities wane and die. The highway passes through them unaware. The bus groans onward. Miles are spinning by. I try to sleep, but only shut one eye. The low, long drone of voices strums my ear. All day the sun burns circles in the sky. In little towns, the families wave goodbye. The old men sit on benches, children stare. The bus groans onward, miles are spinning by. I sit and feel so small, ask, who am I? The other voices murmur like a prayer. I watch the sun burn circles in the sky. The bus groans onward, miles are spinning by.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we were talking about form before we ever started this recording, or if we talked about it since we've been here, but
I can't remember either.
exactly. Well, what the hell? It's worth repeating. The fact that it's always kind of nice to have a, if you feel like writing, but you don't have a burning issue in mind, if you want to go to a form, just have to come up with a line, and then one thing leads to another in a way, and
Right.
able to fill out the form, and boom, voila, you've come up with a poem that you
Yeah.
had no idea that you were going to maybe possibly write.
Yeah. One of the favorite villanelles, and probably one of the most well-known one, was the one by Dylan Thomas about now do not go gentle into that good night.
Right.
Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just love that.
Yeah. That's a great poem. And the I'm beginning to feel like I have Alzheimer's disease. But
Uh-oh.
I mean, it's not a joke. It shouldn't be a joke because it's not a joking matter. But I keep as time goes on, another one of the things that happens to us is we tend to forget our train of thought, or maybe that's a poet digression thing. I have no idea.
Right.
But I something about the villanelle that I was gonna. Oh, I know what it was. It was our mutual friend, our girlfriend, Cheryl Nothey, wound up writing that last collection she did on her experiences of running around the
Oh,
state.
right. Big dog or gray
Great
dog.
buses, yeah.
Yeah.
And then another uh, poet friend of mine, which I don't know if did you know Mary Laura Wilson?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Mary
She's
Laura.
delightful.
Yes, she was, and she had a great poem about riding the bus. I don't know where she was headed, but and talking about how the people next to her were on their phone and their little thumbs
Mm,
going and whatnot. And of course, she was spending the whole time doing what you did in that poem, which was like looking out the windows and observing things outside. But she was a great observer too.
absolutely.
In her poems.
Yeah.
Well, you got another one handy?
Well, I got a couple of newer ones I wanted to read.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Yeah. By new, I mean that they've been written in the last 2 or 3 months. So,
Right, right.
and this is after Mike died. I spent a lot of time writing poems as almost as a tribute, but also as a cathartic thing for myself.
Sure.
And this is one of them called Gone. I haven't seen you around, not today, not yesterday, nor the day before. And I won't see you tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that. Still, the birds sing sweetly, and the cars pass one by one, and what happens today will happen again and again. I opened the plastic bag that contains your ashes with plans to spread them here and there. The bag was so heavy. I remember holding you, your warm shoulders, the lightness of your spirit, the laughter. Yes, the laughter.
Nice.
Then this other one is another amusement, the block of prose.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. It's called The Right Mistake. The right mistake is where you head down the wrong road and end up in a better place. The wrong road to Hot Springs, Montana is where you find yourself face to face with a lavender moon and deep purple mountains. The clouds are a dusty rose. If you knew where you were going, this would have been a destination. Instead, you continue down the way on darker and darker dirt roads, supposing your destination is the right place to be. Sorrow has no purchase here. You are stranded in the car with your loved one. You can only utter a silent gasp at the view which is unfolded. If you knew where you were, it would take the breath out of the moment. If you could remember where you'd been, way back there, squinting at the map, you'd not forget your reason for coming, for arriving here between two mountains shrouded by low clouds, the moon shining serenely on, which is where you'll always be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. There is, nothing. I mean, that's poetic gold, I'd say, when someone you love dies. It's a gift of poetry that just is going to come.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it's so important to just let it come.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, but that's what everybody wants. That's what I want. That's what every other reader who loves to read poetry is going to want, is
Mm-hmm.
a gift. And you've got to do it.
Right, right.
There's no other way around it. But
Yeah.
the imagery in that poem is wonderful. And it's got a lot of the sort of the trademarks of you, in that it starts out kind of playful, and
Mm-hmm.
that looking at things, and then we're in this discovery of whatever, but then we know we're on a mission because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mike is with you, and
Right.
yeah, and then it's wonderful. uh
Yeah. A lot of my poems are about death,
mhm.
but for a person who's written so much about death, you would think I would know more about it.
Yeah, well,
Mm.
I mean, it's like, something else. I mean, it was just the other night I heard it, and of course I've thought it and heard it from others and prior, but it was something that somebody that just said, and they were a really young person, and I thought, yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's probably a universal thought, the fact that death, the reality of death, the understanding of death makes living more important.
Mm-hmm.
It adds I mean, it just adds an awareness that you should live this life to its fullest.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
because yeah, because death is inevitable, and it's close.
Right,
Oh,
right.
it's close,
Right.
even if it's 50 years away.
Right. Death is just around the corner.
There it is, the core. uh,
Yeah.
yeah, those are great. And I to get back to your amusements, is that what you called them?
Right, right.
Yeah, I like musement better than prose poem. I don't know what it is about the phrase prose poem, but it's all,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I know a lot of people that write terrific prose poems, and I think your amusements are great prose poems. I don't know what the hell a prose poem is, and I've had people try to describe exactly what it is, and of course you can't describe what a poem is to begin with anyway. So I understand. It's a poem. It's not regularly lined. I guess that's
Right, right, right. Yeah.
prose poem, but I like musement.
Yeah. 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 Maybe it's just prose that write prose poems.
There you go. Prose, PROS.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Huh,
Uh,
huh.
well, I should ask you to read the one that I mentioned earlier to you, which was a poem towards the end of Alibi for Stolen Light. This is Zan's second collection, which was a part of the Foothills poetry series a couple of years ago, Alibi for Stolen Light, and the Peace by Another Name poem.
Oh, right.
You
Okay.
read that poem?
Yeah. Okay, here we go. And this got the epigraph by R.D. Lang,
Mm-hmm.
which is We are effectively destroying ourselves by violence masquerading as love. Peace by another name. A friend of mine was stabbed at a peace rally. He said the knife split his chest like fire as it grazed his sternum, so close to the heart that his every generous act flashed across the sun-seared sky. He still bears the scar. The assailant escaped, thrashing through the milling crowd, vanishing in the impossible second between the assault and when the assault had been. My friend felt blood pour through his fingers. His face he once had dreams of hitting his father, but always his fist stopped inches from his target, the connection never made. He awoke, hands clenched, in the shimmering light of blue mornings. Do we need war to define peace? Our children fight with plastic guns and grenades, defending us against our own violent love. There are two stories here, one where the heart knows why it beats, and one where the heart pounds relentlessly, monotonously, defying the reason for its being. No sanctity lies in the latter. Love and hate occupy the same part of the body. The blade twisted as it sought to prove itself. White light descended over all who gathered, equally fierce. Creation and destruction exchanged names for a higher purpose. The motive remains unclear.
Motive remains unclear.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, was that based on a real incident?
Based on a real friend of mine, yeah, he was
Yeah.
stabbed at a peace rally.
Yeah, exactly. What an irony.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that whole the whole thing, as we talked about earlier in my because I studied and read exhaustively R.D. Laing's work years ago, because I just found him so fascinating.
Yeah, the politics of experience.
Yeah, the politics of experience, the politics of the family, the divided self,
Right, yeah.
all these books that basically talked about the fact that sometimes things like schizophrenia were created by the way that people were treated in certain situations, uh, basically power masquerading as love or whatever.
Mhm.
And I thought, that to an extent, I think this whole pandemic thing has brought some of that kind of into focus too, I think, and made people really think about the whole concept of family, and some of it too probably has to do with the divisive sort of political world
Right,
that has come into play here in the last, well, decade or more, but particularly in the last 5 years or so,
right.
with the whole Trump thing and all that stuff. This sort of rise of authoritarianism around the world, and,
Mhm.
and why all that. I mean, and the pandemic, of course, then coming at the same time, I think has just shut people into these isolated sort of places and you've got more time to think about and observe all this
Right.
stuff that's going on, and I think it's led to a lot of people coming to the conclusion of, well, I mean, maybe blood isn't thicker than water, or things like that, right? I mean,
Right.
there's more to the politics of the family can be a very destructive thing. The politics of anything can be a very destructive thing. People wanting power over other people, and sort of abusing a situation and pretending like it's for their benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But so that when I read that again today, I thought, wow, yeah, and the motive remains unclear, is echoes on so many different levels
Mhm.
in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And the fact that love and hate come from the same place.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, Zan, I don't know. Is there anything else that you want to say or share or anything in this whole business?
Um. Boy, not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly glad we did this, and we added your work and your voice reading your work into this archive, and I think it's a good thing that it's going to be there. And if somebody ever is interested in who the hell these people were that were writing poetry at this time in Montana, there'll be a big bunch of them there.
Oh, I so appreciate being asked.
Oh,
It's an honor to just talk to you.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
Honor off camera.
well, yeah, totally. I mean, the camera thing is a different thing entirely, but I just decided at the beginning of this whole thing that I wasn't going to even pay attention to the goddamn camera, and it's just
Right.
just going to be a visit, and you know, it is what it is. If somebody it really doesn't like it, then they're going to fucking leave, you know.
Right. Right.
But if they like your work, they'll put up with the likes of me, you know, just to hear your poetry.
And vice versa.
Yeah, right. Well, anyway, it's been a pleasure, Zan, and we should get together soon.
Absolutely.
Maybe over in Cheryl's yard for a Coors Light.
Right.
Her beverage of choice these days. All right. Well, thanks, Zan Bockes. And anything, have you have like a manuscript or anything you're working on right now?
One thing I'm working on is a collection of short stories.
Cool.
So I've got that completed. I'm just looking for, gonna query some small presses about getting that published. So
cool. All right. Well, I look forward to our next visit.
Yeah. Congrats on the Poet Laureate too.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's, you know, the like I've said before, the one great benefit of it is, at least for a while, you get to parade around and visit with poets and talk about poetry. And it's like, you know, when you've got a regular job, nobody gives a shit about poetry, but we do. And so we get a chance to do it now. And this 2 years gives me a chance to do a lot of it. So I'm really grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Okay.
Take care, Zan.
Thanks. Bye.
Got a lifetime filled